Imagine a world where, to watch a film at home, you physically went to a store and picked out a DVD. This was life in the late 1990s. Every weekend, you'd pop over to your local Blockbuster to rent the latest movie on DVD. The aisles, the popcorn smell, the late fees, all part of the experience. Around this same time, there's this small startup called Netflix, offering a unique service. DVDs sent to you via post with no late fees. They made sure you didn't need to leave your couch to choose from thousands of titles, and the films arrived at your doorstep. Fast forward to 2007, Netflix, sensing the changing winds, introduced its streaming service, allowing subscribers to instantly watch films and TV shows on their personal computers. They shifted gears before most realized the gear even existed. By 2013, Netflix wasn't just distributing content, they were producing it. Hits like House of Cards and Stranger Things soon followed. Meanwhile, Blockbuster, despite its massive presence and brand recognition, hesitated. They were late to the online rental game, later still to the idea of streaming, and in one of business history's most noted missteps, they even passed on the opportunity to purchase Netflix in 2000. Instead of adapting to the shifting landscape, Blockbuster held tightly onto its brick-and-mortar roots. By 2013, when Netflix was releasing Emmy Award-winning content, Blockbuster announced the closure of its last company-owned stores. What's the lesson here? Two companies, both with immense potential, took drastic, different paths in the face of change. One adapted, innovated, and now stands as an entertainment behemoth. The other resisted change, and despite its once mighty presence, became a case study in missed opportunities. Today we're talking about organizational change and development. We'll start with organizational change, discussing what it means and why it's sometimes necessary. We'll then explore why and how changes are sometimes resisted by employees, and what organizations might do to overcome this resistance. I'll then introduce you to two models of organizational change that provide step-by-step frameworks that help practitioners guide organizations through these changes smoothly and effectively. We'll then discuss organizational development, highlighting techniques organizations use to ensure their continuous long-term growth and improvement. So what do we mean when we talk about organizational change? Well, in simple terms, it's tweaking an organization's environment, structure, technology, or people. It's a pretty broad concept. That's why we save this topic for when we've explored factors like job attitudes, work design, stress, motivation, team dynamics, leadership, and organizational structures and cultures. The idea today is to see how we can shake up some of the things we've covered in this course so far. Sometimes change could mean tweaking one aspect, or it could mean overhauling the entire system. The reason we care about managing organizational change effectively is because change is that one constant we can't escape. Be it legislation changes or technological advances, organizations have to keep pace and evolve. So yeah, navigating change is part and parcel of organizational life and can be an opportunity or a challenge. Take the evolution of film rentals as an example. Netflix, sensing a shift in consumer preferences, decided to innovate and introduced online streaming, leveraging it as an opportunity. On the other hand, Blockbuster, mired in their traditional brick-and-mortar model, failed to adapt. Even when presented with a chance to collaborate with Netflix, they declined, viewing the digital shift as more of a challenge than an opportunity. So what changes might an organization consider? It could be reorganizing to work in teams or introducing flexible work hours. It could mean an upgrade in tech or automation. It could also mean changing physical office layouts or swapping buildings. Perhaps it's a revamp of communication methods, reporting systems, or even decision-making hierarchies. It could also be a change in the organizational structure. And why introduce these changes? The need for change can rise from forces external to the organization or internal. Competition in the market can light a fire under a company. Novel legislation may demand a different approach, or a shift in the economy may necessitate a new plan. With the rapid evolution of technology, organizations might suddenly need to level up in the tech space, or changes in social or consumer trends, just like in the case of Netflix. But it's not all about external pressures. There's a whole world of internal forces that can spark change too. Changes in business strategies, perhaps a switch from being an adapter to an innovator, or an investment in new machinery. Employee attitudes can often act as a red flag for change, prompting an organizational review. Compensation structures may need adjusting, or perhaps there's been a shift in the workforce's composition, like a surplus or a shortage of labor. So lots of different forces that can bring about change. And changes can be planned or unplanned. Most of what we're talking about in this lecture, and that we deal with in the practice of IO psychology, is managing planned change. Instead of just reacting to changes as they come up, an effective organization is proactive, strategically planning the next step. It's all about being intentional and goal-directed. Yes, reactive changes exist, and they're noteworthy, like the change that happened around the COVID pandemic. But for now, our spotlight is on those planned, pre-thought-out change efforts. Why do we focus on planned change? 2 reasons. First, to help individuals and groups shift their behavior to fit the organization's goals. And secondly, to make the organization nimble, not just addressing present needs, but gearing up for future challenges. Let's talk about the architects behind organizational change, the change agents. These are the individuals or groups championing and managing change efforts, ensuring they're on course and effectively implemented. So who might this be? It could be someone at the top, like a CEO or a HR director, or even a specialist from the organizational development unit. And let's not forget about the outside experts. Big consulting firms like EY or KPMG bring to the table their robust teams who specialize in change, acting as advisors to shape and steer the change journey. On the other hand, there are smaller boutique consultancies with a specific focus on change management, tailored for smaller or medium-scale change projects. External change agents can be useful for bringing a fresh, objective perspective, backed by vast experience across various industries. However, trust building can be slow, especially with employees, and sometimes their proposed changes can feel too ambitious, trying to overhaul almost everything at once. With internal change agents being someone in-house, trust is established more quickly. They understand the organizational pulse and its dynamics. However, their proximity to the organization might make them too cautious. They could shy away from suggesting essential changes, fearing backlash or fearing stepping on other people's toes. Let's introduce another key player in the change game, the change champion, or as some like to call it, the change warrior. These aren't always the high-level execs. Often they're middle management, team leaders, or even those at the front lines, deeply ingrained in the organization's daily operations. Here's their role. They're equipped with in-depth knowledge about the upcoming change, turning them into the go-to people for clarity. Their real strength, though, is their enthusiasm for the change. They're the ones cheering everyone on, dispelling doubts, and rallying the troops towards the goal. Think of them as the bridge between top management's change vision and the wider organization's execution of that vision. There are tons of success stories where change champions have been game changers, ensuring smooth sailing during transitions. At Ford Motor Company, when Alan Mulally took over as CEO in 2006, he implemented a transformation plan called One Ford. Change champions were vital in this effort, helping to rally employees around the new vision and ensuring collaboration across various divisions. But not every story has a happy ending. BlackBerry, once the leader in smartphones, struggled despite having individual employees pushing for change. As the industry moved towards touchscreen smartphones and apps, internal divisions and resistance meant that BlackBerry couldn't pivot quickly enough, leading to its decline in the market. One of the biggest challenges that we deal with in organizational change is resistance to change. And this graphic summarizes some of the common arguments against it from employees. It's company policy, it's not my job, it's against tradition, it's too radical, it's too ambitious, or we've always done it this way. People are often very resistant to change. That's something that's common in everyday life, but also common, sometimes especially common, in the workplace. Some employees wear their feelings on their sleeves, loudly voicing their concerns, and even resorting to significant actions like strikes. This isn't just problematic for management, but it casts a shadow over the entire workforce, affecting morale, productivity, and well-being. But sometimes resistance isn't always so loud and clear. It can be subtle, like a growing sense of distrust towards the organization, or diminishing loyalty. These feelings can erode performance. They can spike absentee rates, and even push some to consider leaving the organization. Think of it as an iceberg. The most damaging parts might be lurking under the surface. Where does this resistance come from? To understand this, you'd have to put yourself in the employee's shoes. One source of resistance is ambiguity. Imagine being unsure about the ins and outs of a change. Will I have to learn a new software? Am I still going to fit in after this? Another source is financial worries. It's human to worry about job security, especially if there's a company shakeup. Personality traits. Change can be intimidating if you're someone who loves stability or if you're super invested in a specific role. Old habits also die hard. Sometimes policies and procedures can have a sort of inertia that can be hard to overcome. Consider the shift to flexible work. If you've been driving to work at 9 a.m. for the past 10 years, switching that up can feel weird. It's also the case that some people might only tune in to the potential negatives. If they hear change, their brains might go straight to job cuts, even if that's not the case. So, big picture, if we're sloppy about managing and communicating change, we're setting ourselves up for some real setbacks. This cartoon gives an example of the phases that an organization can go through when introducing change, based on observations of nurses when computerized note-taking was first introduced. It's a lighthearted way of showcasing the very real roller coaster of change management. First, there's resistance. They're used to using the charts. They don't want to have to use a computer. And then uncertainty. Maybe a computer would be faster. And that's followed by assimilation, where I'm using the new technology, but I'm also still relying on the old way of doing things. And then there's transference, where I wonder, what else could be computerized? Could I use the computer for teaching plans as well as note-taking? And finally, integration, where they feel they couldn't imagine writing notes without a computer. So full acceptance and embracing of the change. So organizations, when they roll out changes, are aiming for that final phase, complete integration. But it's crucial to realize that every phase, from resistance to integration, is an essential part of the journey. As people, we don't just leap into the unknown. We dip our toes, test the waters, sometimes flail around a bit, and finally, once we're sure, we dive in. So organizational change is a slow process, even when, and perhaps especially when, it's managed effectively.